Greetings lore seekers and welcome to another episode of the Lost Archives, a Star Wars Legends lore series. So this week we're going to be talking about the Prophets of the Dark Side, an organisation that was an offshoot of the Sith Order, and then later on the Personal Order of the Emperor. So firstly I will explain about their formation and how they started, and then I shall talk about when they decided to work for Palpatine. So originally they were founded by a Sith Lord known as Darth Millennial, a Sith Lord who was a descendant of Darth Bane but rejected the rule of two, believing in the rule of the strong. He fell out with his Sith master at the time, left the organisation of the Sith, and then went and founded his new organisation on the Sith homeworld of Dromund Kaas. This was the Prophets of the Dark Side, though at the timing of their founding they went under the name of Dark Force. Now, before Darth Millennial passed away, he managed to gain quite a conclave of followers around him, and what they would do is they would use the dark side of the Force to peer into any possible future events that would happen in the galaxy, recording them in song-like format, as noted by Asajj Ventress. Now, eventually a splinter group of these prophets would leave and form a new colony on the planet Calacar 6. They would remain there as an official branch of the Order for many, many centuries. I'll cover a bit about their fate later on in the video. Unofficial and heretical versions of their organisations, though, the prophets would hunt down and destroy. Now, the Sith actually forgot about the Prophets' existence for many, many centuries, until eventually a fateful day came and they were rediscovered by Sidious, or Palpatine as he was more commonly known. And thus he bent them to his will like he did with many, many different Force groups. So, to be fair, the ultimatum of bend the knee or die may not have been used in this case because they were of similar ideals. They came from the same order originally. No need for Palpatine to invoke his inner Daenerys, I suppose. Or was it Daenerys invoking her inner Palpatine? I suppose we'll never know. You know what? Whenever someone uses megalomania going forward, I'm just going to refer it to invoking their inner Palpatine. May as well. Anyway, back on topic. So now that Palpatine had discovered this useful tool that he could use to prepare all his agents for the upcoming Clone Wars and subsequent siege of the Galactic Republic's power base, he went, and as Dooku left the Jedi archives, he had 36 systems deleted from the Jedi archives. This included Dromund Kaas, in order to protect the prophets from being discovered by the Jedi. I do think that perhaps it was Dooku who did this. It's only really speculated on in any of the Legends material that Dooku removed all of these as he left, but considering that only a master would have the authorization to be able to do this, that does make sense that it had been Dooku that had done this. Now, a lot of their Dark Jedi and various fallen compatriots that they would organise ready to work in hand with the Separatist armies, Palpatine would send for training with the Prophets. This would include Asajj Ventress, and she would make several comments on the Prophets and the way in which they lived their lives. Once the Clone Wars was completed and Palpatine had become Emperor of the Galaxy, they would become known as the Secret Order of the Emperor, with him putting a fallen Jedi turned Dark Jedi known as Kadan in place as their supreme prophet of the dark side. I do think this was mostly so he could maintain a certain amount of control over the organisation, as he had a trusted advisor in place as their top person. Kadan will get his own video at some point, as he was a man who passed the Jedi trials, but really became a philosopher and then eventually started to question the Jedi Code's position on the dark side. eventually coming to the conclusion that both light and dark were necessary if one was to truly master the Force. Unfortunately, he fell heavily into the dark side and then lost touch with the light. But like I said, more on him in his own video. So, with the prophets serving as the secret order of the Emperor, they would perform various tasks. This would include their original role of predicting the future and recording them in order to advise Palpatine on how certain things may go with his rule. More on that later. The other thing they would be tasked with doing is essentially scouting the galaxy for Force sensitives. These individuals would become known as the Emperor's Mages, and what they would do is they would travel the galaxy looking for anyone with Force potential. Once they found them, they would observe them for quite a while, until eventually the prospective candidate would stop, notice this person who's been found and go, "Who the hell are you and what the hell are you doing here?" To which the mage would turn and go, "I'm an envoy of the Emperor and I offer you this chance. Become an agent of mine, serve me and potentially join something greater." Now what this would detail is that they would send them on near suicidal missions that couldn't be done officially. So a lot of this would include wet work such as assassinations, or even inspecting enemy craft and then destroying them for special intelligence, all for furthering the Empire's goals. Well, his dark side goals anyway. As far as the Emperor was concerned, the galaxy could eventually rot. Once the agent had then proven themselves to both the Empire and the Mage, they would be inducted into the Secret Order, firstly as a first initiate and given special additional duties, including combat missions to prove their prowess in battle. As the agent would progress through the Order, he would join what was known as the Second Circle, then the Third Circle, Fourth Circle, and eventually the Inner Circle. This would then earn them a specific title, which would include titles such as the Emperor's Fingers, Emperor's Eyes, the Emperor's Voice, the Emperor's Reach, and the Emperor's Hand. Though this is not to be confused with Palpatine's personal agents known as the Emperor's Hands, though these candidates could be recruited from this, as certain members of the Prophets of the Dark Side did actually eventually become the personal Emperor's Hands. One such is the Prophet Chronal, or more commonly known as his Emperor's Hand codename, Blackhole. If any of you have read that particular novel, you'll know that that guy was actually the very reason why that Luke eventually resigned his commission in the Alliance military, and then decided to focus more on his Jedi training. Other specialised tasks that the Emperor would give to the Prophets specifically would be the testing of his apprentice or apprentice level candidates. Now I'm going to return to the colony of Calicar 6 for a moment here, and this was a specific test that the Prophets supposedly wanted to put Darth Vader through. Now, personally, I do believe that Palpatine may have had his machinations in this, but, you know, plausible deniability was the name of the game when it came to Palpatine. So, the Prophets on Calicar 6 used various rituals and Sith alchemy to essentially bring back to life the deceased Darth Maul. Now, this would fit into the canon as established by the Clone Wars TV series if it takes place after the Battle of Yavin, when Darth Maul had been slain by Obi-Wan on Tatooine. If you've seen the Clone Wars cartoons, you know what I'm talking about, because I'm just going to take a side note here and say, you know what, I'm really glad they brought that Ultimes comic into official canon. That Darth Maul, yes, I really enjoyed that. But you can still work it in that this can still take place later on. So essentially what had happened was these prophets said that Darth Vader isn't worthy to be Palpatine's apprentice, and so they sicked this Sith spawn-like creation of Maul onto Vader, and they fought. Vader cut Maul's lightsaber in half, but both blades still stayed lit, so then he'd switch lightsaber style and battle Vader with the two. He nearly won if Vader didn't decide, if I stab my own blade through me, it's going to hurt you a lot more than it's going to hurt me. Yeah, okay, Vader. Alright, yeah, you can feed off the dark side, but you're still going to have to spend a lot of time in a back to tank and maybe get more robotic replacements. Fair enough. Fair play to you. You were already damaged. And then before Vader could then turn and deal with the prophets, suddenly a bolt of electricity would jut out from nowhere as Palpatine would zap them up to death. It does not pay to be Palpatine's servants. If he can use you in his machinations, he will. And so the colony on Calicar 6 was not fired, more fried. That joke was bad. So yes, Palpatine would use various of the organisations that had bent the knee to him to test his various apprentices or various schemes he'd have, and he'd leave it so he wouldn't be left holding the bag. Now, this is another potential problem for the rest of the prophets as well, as Kadan, shortly before the Battle of Endor, had a prophecy that a huge catastrophe would happen at Endor that would, and I quote, bring the Force back into balance. And let's just say the ghost of Palpatine is probably still laughing about that to this day. This caused a bit of a schism in the prophets, where half of them left and fled Palpatine's wrath, or the potential wrath of Palpatine, and went and sequestered themselves on a world and remained in hiding for as long as they could. These two prophets being the remainder of the prophets of the dark side, signalling a split from the Empire. Whereas the prophets that sided with the Empire and Sidious, after Sidious's death, set up a new organisation called the Church of the Dark Side, as a sort of mock to the prophets. I'll be doing my own video on them as well, possibly following this one as the next lore video, we'll see. But yeah, the prophets would not be heard from again, except with various false versions of Kadan propping up the children of the dark side, until the time of the Dark Empire and the return of Palpatine to the galaxy. That's something I plan to cover later as well. And then eventually, during the shenanigans that happened during the Dark Empire comic book series, the last of the prophets were killed by Luminaire, Dark Lady of the Sith, one of Vader's acolytes. Oh, that came to bite you all in the back, didn't it, Palpatine? And Kana Jax, an Imperial Sovereign Protector. Essentially, they were known as the Royal Guard Champions. He was also an aspiring Sith Lord and a Sith apprentice to Luminaire. He's definitely getting his own lore video. But the two of them proceeded to butcher the remainder of the prophets on the Imperial Throne Room of Biss, and after that the organisation was never heard from again. Now, I could speculate, perhaps some members survived and joined other organisations such as the One Sith, or maybe even the Lost Tribe, when they finally reared their head in the galaxy. But I suppose we'll never know now, as that version of the canon no longer exists until, you know, maybe they eventually bring them back into canon. Possibly with the rise of Skywalker, we may see, with Palpatine rearing his head in that, we may see a version of the Prophets of the Dark Side, we may not. Only time will tell. Anyway, as always, my sources will be listed below in the description. Also, let me know what you think of the new music I've been using on the channel down in the comments below. And like I say, let me know what you think of this video by dropping a comment, maybe leaving a like or dislike. And if you'd like to stay up to date with all my content, consider hitting that subscribe button. Anyway, Lore Seekers, take care and have a good day.